Hello. This morning we are talking about an MLA review and editing. Why are we doing this? Well, we are still continuing on working to recognize writing as a process that includes different steps, including research, revising, editing, proofreading, and we are still working on constructing a writing project using research from a variety of sources cited correctly in MLA format. So this week's lecture is a little bit different. I have included here a couple of links to YouTube videos from the OWL at Purdue related to MLA citations. So here we've got in-text citations, and you can just click this link or copy and paste this link when you look at the slides. And here we have the MLA list of works cited. Again, it's going to be a short video from the MLA the OWL at Purdue, that talks about the important information related to both in-text citations and works cited lists. I thought it would be nice to have a change of pace and for you all to hear from some other experts about the use of MLA in your papers. So you will want to take the time to review that information very carefully because your works cited and your in-text citations are really important to make sure that we're not accidentally plagiarizing in our writing. The next thing that we're going to talk about today, if I can get my computer to cooperate with me, so there are some MLA activities which you have the option of working with this week. I have included a variety of different things that will help you to complete or to help you become familiarized with MLA, the MLA best practices. We've got citations, we've got just kind of a general review assignment, and there's some MLA practice for you. So I would encourage you to attempt one or more of these this week to try to review information about MLA and ensure that you understand everything so that you can effectively use it in your essay. All right, so the next thing I'd like to talk about this week is editing and proofreading. So editing and proofreading happens after we have a full draft. We've got our rough draft complete, we've done our outline, we've got our rough draft, and now we're thinking about revising and working on the structure of our essay to make sure that everything is as effective as it possibly can be. So it's what happens when you what happens as soon as you finish your first draft. So you reread your draft to see whether the paper is well organized, if it has transitions between paragraphs, and to make sure that the evidence really backs up your argument. So this is where we can go back in and say, did I really say what I wanted to say? Did I say the same thing that I thought I was going to say when I started, or has it changed somewhere along the way? When we edit our work, we want to pay attention to a few areas: content, structure, paragraph structure, clarity, style, and citations. So we're going to talk a little bit about tips that you can use in your own writing in each of these areas. So content is what you've written about. Have you done everything the assignment requires? Go back and look at the assignment sheet. Look at the instructions. Are the claims you make accurate? If it's required to do so, does your paper make an argument? Is the argument complete? Are your claims consistent? Have you supported each point with adequate evidence from your research? Is all of the information in your paper relevant to the assignment and or to your writing goal? So this is where you look at, did I really, does my thesis statement support the rest of the paper? Does the rest of the paper support my thesis statement? Have I included enough research? Do I need to include different kinds of research? Have I started to say one thing that this was my argument and then it shifted somewhere in the paper? This is where we go back and look to make sure that all of that is clear. The next thing we want to consider is essay structure. So we've been talking about essay structure and paragraph structure for the past couple of weeks. This is where you look to make sure that you've got it. Does your essay have an appropriate intro and conclusion? Is your thesis statement clear? Is it clear how each paragraph in the body of your paper is related to the thesis? Are the paragraphs arranged in a logical sequence? Have you made clear transitions between paragraphs? So this is where, if you want, go back and review the essay and paragraph structure lectures from last week and the week before in order to ensure that you have all of the relevant information and you've utilized it correctly. Paragraph structure. Does each paragraph have a clear topic sentence? Does each paragraph stick to one main idea? Are there extra or missing sentences in any of your paragraphs? Are you using the PIECE formula to make sure you have a point, introduction, evidence, citation, and explanation? That's a really helpful paragraph structure to utilize to get familiar with. I would recommend using that for all of your body paragraphs. So have you done that? Go through and look at each paragraph and label the different sections of each paragraph. Label your point, label your introduction, label your evidence. If something's missing, go ahead and add it. Clarity is what we mean when we say, is everything clear to the readers? Have you defined important terms that may be unclear? Is the meaning of each sentence clear? A really helpful way to help with this is to answer this question, is to read your paper one sentence at a time, starting at the end and working backwards so that you don't unconsciously fill in content from previous sentences. Is it clear which pronoun, the he, she, it, what they refer to? Have you chosen the proper words to express your ideas? One tip here, oftentimes we may turn to the thesaurus to help ourselves when we're in the writing process, and we may be utilizing words that we're not really familiar with. I encourage you to use words that you're familiar with. You want to sound like yourself. This is your writing, not somebody else's, right? So avoid using words from the thesaurus that you wouldn't normally use in an attempt to kind of sound smarter or more educated. Sound like yourself. Be yourself. This is your writing. We want it to reflect your personality. Style is one of the last things that we looked at. So have you used an appropriate tone? Is it formal, informal, persuasive? Is it academic? Is it conversational? Think about the assignment. Look at the instructions. What are you supposed to be writing? Is your use of gendered language appropriate? So have you used the term fireman when you are referring to fire people, or mailman when you're referring to male persons? Pay attention to how you use gendered language and make sure that you're not accidentally being stereotypical or you're not making incorrect assumptions. Have you varied the length and structure of your sentences? We don't want to read a sentence that is one paragraph long every single paragraph, right? Sometimes that may be okay. It's hard to think of situations that it would really be okay. I mean, there are writers like James Joyce comes to mind. He was very famous for his lengthy sentences. But if we're trying to trudge through incredibly complicated sentences all the time, your readers will get tired. Similarly, if we have really choppy sentences, the cat run, the cat sat, the dog hit the ball, anything like that, it's going to sound really choppy and repetitive. So we want to change those things up to make sure that we're engaging our readers and keeping them on their toes. Do you tend to use the passive voice too often? So what is the passive voice? Passive voice is when the subject is not the person or thing doing the action. So the ball was hit. Well, who hit the ball in that sentence? We don't know. A good way to check for passive voice is add by zombies at the end of the sentence. The ball was hit by zombies. The cat was chased by zombies. That's passive voice. In order to change that up, we would say the cat hit the ball. The zombies chased the cat. The dog ate the food. Instead of that places the action being done by the subject of the sentence as opposed to this sort of ephemeral thing doing some sort of action that we're unaware of. So pay attention to that. Does your writing contain a lot of unnecessary phrases? I call these weasel words. Have you tried to explain something and added a lot of a lot of unnecessary sentences that just complicate and confuse things without really providing meaning? So phrases like there is, there are, oftentimes you can just start the sentence after that. This is a place too where you want to pay attention to first person. Have you said, in my opinion, I think, it's my observation, anything like that? We don't need that information. We know it's your opinion. We know it's what you think because you're the one doing the writing. So you can get rid of all of those things. Finally, we want to look at citations. Have you appropriately cited quotes, paraphrases, and ideas you got from sources? And are the citations in the correct format? We want to triply check that to make sure that we're not accidentally plagiarizing. So proofreading then, we've talked about what editing was. Proofreading focuses on things like grammar, spelling, and punctuation. So this is where we get into the nitty-gritty. We have a draft that we've revised a couple of times. We are doing this a couple of days before the due date, so we have some time to set our essay aside and go back and look at it with fresh eyes. But this is where we make sure that we're presenting our best writing. It's important because we're often blind to our own errors, mistakes, bad grammar, poor layout of sentences and paragraphs, poorly constructed sentences, lack or incorrect use of punctuation, and of course spelling or typing errors. Sometimes we just don't see that stuff, so it's important that we pay attention to it and make a concerted effort to put our best writing forward. So performing a thorough proofread of your work will give you the chance to fix any errors that remain and that may cloud your intended meaning. Though many computers offer spell checkers, they can't catch tricky and commonly misused words like homophones. They can't also impact the way that you can if you proofread and give your paper a word-by-word review. So your Microsoft Word will catch misspellings, but sometimes if something is really misspelled, it doesn't know what to do with it. And it also can't catch things like if you said here, H-E-R-E, and you meant to say here, H-E-A-R. The computer won't catch that, so you have to go through and pay attention to this by giving a word-by-word review. Grammar mistakes can also be caught and fixed, especially if you read your work aloud. Since misplaced punctuation can change the entire meaning of a sentence, it's also important to ensure that these little marks have been expertly employed. I highly recommend reading your essay aloud or having someone read it aloud to you. So here are some practical proofreading tactics. First thing, consider printing out your work or altering the document formatting. This can help you review your work as if it were written by a classmate. So even if you can't print something, I don't have a printer at home right now, so I can't print anything. If you change the formatting, change the font, change the size, it helps you maybe look at it from a different perspective. Another thing you can do is place a separate piece of paper over your work to block out unread pieces of text while you proofread each line to help you concentrate on each word of your paper individually. So go through your essay, put a piece of paper up on the computer screen if that's what you do, and move line by line and see, does this make sense? Do I have the correct punctuation? Have I misspelled things? If you or your teachers have identified certain areas for improvement in your writing, review your work with the goal of addressing those areas. So for example, writers who find punctuation problematic can print out their papers and highlight or circle punctuation marks to determine if they're necessary and appropriate. This is a really good tip if you feel like you struggle with punctuation. Print it out, or if you can't print it out, use your computer, highlight each piece of punctuation in a different color. So once again, I have a link to a folder with editing and proofreading activities. I would encourage you to consider completing some of these activities and writing about what you did in your weekly check-in. So here are some additional editing and proofreading resources. There's a lot of different strategies, a lot of different tips here. I think that this is a really important thing to do, and it often gets overlooked because we feel rushed. That's why I encourage you to work on your writing as a process. Don't start your essay the day before it's due. Remember, we should be working on an outline and then a draft and then revising our draft in order to make it the best we can. And editing and proofreading are key aspects of the writing process, so don't overlook them. I've given you some ideas about what to do in your weekly check-in, but here are a couple more. So you could work on one of the MLA practice handouts or the editing and proofreading activities. One thing that might be fun and interesting to do, record yourself reading your essay aloud, then listen to the recording and write a response about what you noticed. Of course, you're allowed to check in with me however you'd like. These are just a couple of suggestions to utilize the content from this week's lecture so that you will be able to accurately utilize it in your writing project and then in your reflective letter. Once again, a reminder of how to get in touch with me, a couple of additional resources. Remember, the Writing Center is still open, even though it's not at a physical location. You can still get help from the Writing Center tutors, and you can also utilize tutor.com if you have access to that. If you're feeling like you need help with a disability resource and access, please contact Sandy Maynor. And as always, I'm here to help in whatever way I can. Feel free to call me, email me. We can set up a Zoom meeting or a conversation, however works best for you. As always, if you have questions, concerns, comments, anything class related or not, please let me know. Take care and stay safe.